name is Pat Cleats, and I'm a professor here in the Division of Interior Architecture. This course, it's called a Design Charrette, and we have been doing this in our curriculum probably for the last 10 or 15 years. In this particular case, I've noticed that students and the general public are sort of enamored of these programs on HGTV, where in the course of a half an hour they can transform a house for $200. And I know our students know better than that, but I didn't know if they really knew what kind of effort was involved, how much cost would be involved, how much things really cost, what you could and couldn't do with a particular property. So I had the idea of working with a local realtor and seeing if we could find a vacant property where the owner would be amenable to our bringing a group of students in to take on a project like this. That was the first part of it, and the second part of it was that I wanted our students to get some practice in team building, leadership, delegation, working together as individual teams, having those teams work together as part of a larger team. That was really my goal for it. And I was really impressed by how well they worked together. It never goes quite as you anticipate. One of the things that I noticed when we first started out the day, when we were on site and measuring, was that the individual teams were very concerned about getting the information about their individual spaces. So if you were the bathroom team, you wanted to be in the bathroom getting all your measurements and getting all that information. And they didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the other spaces in the house. And that, I think, proved to be a bit of their undoing as the day went on. And I can see their motivation because they knew they had a limited amount of time and they had to get this information, and they weren't really sure how much information they were actually going to need, so we better get everything we can possibly get. And when they came back to studio, although they were very equipped to deal with their individual spaces, I don't know if as a group they were equipped to think about the whole house. And that, as I talked to them at the end of the class, was something that we kind of brought up, because I asked them, which space did you think was most important? Well, it probably was the kitchen. I said, did you figure that out by the end of the day, or did you figure that out at the beginning of the day? Because if you had gotten together as a group, figured that out at the beginning of the day, dumped 2/3 of your budget on the kitchen, and then gone and told everybody else to really, be tight with the money, maybe you could have come up with a better overall result. And so that was something that I think they learned and they would do differently if they did the project again.
So when we first got to the house, we didn't know what we were supposed to measure, and so we're all sort of in our own little rooms frantically measuring everything, because we had, I think, only 40 minutes in the space to somehow get enough information to do a whole floor plan.
There was definitely a point, it was after we had our first break, that we were just like, oh man, we have a lot to go yet and we need to get moving. So there was definitely a point where the pressure sunk in and we were just like, okay, we got to get moving on this. But I think one of the biggest things that helped us prepare for the project was going out and looking at the different stores and stuff, and actually doing stuff ahead of time and kind of getting our head wrapped around our concept that we're going to do before we got to the project. And I think that was the most helpful thing.
This group, I was really impressed how well they worked together. I did not, and I had my soft-soled shoes on, so I was sneaking around and listening at the doors and stuff, and they were collegial. They were collaborative. It wasn't until about the last half hour when people started having some technical problems where, images weren't uploading and the Macs weren't talking to the PCs and they weren't, able to submit their work by the deadline, that there were a few little meltdowns. But I've seen a whole lot worse. So, and by the time we kind of debriefed and talked through it, I think they were fine at the end of the day. And they all agreed that it had been fun, that they were impressed by how much they were able to do in that limited period of time, and that they had learned a lot, all of which was my goal.
It was definitely rewarding because none of us had done something like this before, where it's such an intensive effort. it was also good to know that we could do it. We could do a whole project in 8 hours, because usually that kind of thing is spaced out over a semester.
I think that it was really a good experience to learn how to work under pressure and under a time constraint. I thought it was really great to just kind of see what our creative minds were capable in that short amount of time.
You get advantages out of a project like this that you don't anticipate. The relationship that I was able to develop with the realtor, I thought was great. The students developed a relationship with him. This is good public relations in the community. At the same time, we're not competing with the private sector. We were just getting out in the community, kind of showing people what we could do, but we weren't taking business away from designers in the community. That I'm always very concerned about that.